Hello and welcome to the show that fights for freedom and democracy, the show that stands up for the left behind, the show that fights against fake news and the complacent establishment. Right, I can imagine we are all frustrated and sick and tired of these games in Parliament. Now, as most of you have seen, yesterday we had the Brexit vote in Parliament. The bill was obviously voted for, but the timetable that Boris Johnson introduced was rejected, which means that his deadline for the 31st of October, if he were to leave with a deal, has failed. Now, in this video, we're going to be talking about a few things. We're going to criticize a number of groups of people and individuals, starting with Boris Johnson himself, then Nigel Farage, the Brexit Party, and the Remain Parliament and the Labour Party. Now, and then we're going to talk about what's going to be happening in the next few days and in the run-up to the 31st of October, the deadline, and the two options that Boris Johnson has and should actually exercise. So make sure you watch till the end of the video to find out the actual options that we have on the table. But firstly, let's talk about Boris Johnson. This channel has always been objective, regardless of what some people say in the comment section. This is not a pro-Boris or pro-Nigel Farage channel. If someone does something good, I support it. If not, I criticize them. If tomorrow Jeremy Corbyn comes out and supports Brexit, I'll support that. Obviously, that will never happen. So the situation we have is that, firstly, Boris Johnson. Now, we know that technically what happened yesterday, it wasn't his fault. He tried his best. He brought back the EU to the table. He removed the backstop and all these sort of things that people said will never happen. He even got the numbers to vote for his bill, the Brexit deal, and everyone said that's not going to happen. And then at the end, the Remainer MPs blocked it by rejecting his timetable. So yes, technically not his fault. But in reality, ever since he became Prime Minister, he adopted the line of do or die, we're going to be leaving come what may, with the deal or without the deal. It's going to be happening on the 31st of October. Now, considering that, he is essentially the CEO of the government. And now, in any organization or any company, the responsibility it always goes back to the actual boss. And even though sometimes it's not their fault, but they have to take the responsibility. So he must apologize to the British public if he fails to deliver by the end of the month. Now, technically speaking, he hasn't completely failed yet because we haven't gotten the extension just yet. And the deadline is still the 31st of October. So that is still on the table. But if he completely fails, even if it's not his fault, then he must apologise to the British public. Second is Nigel Farage and the Brexit Party. If it weren't for Nigel Farage, we wouldn't have had the referendum in 2016. If it weren't for Nigel Farage, we wouldn't have been able to get rid of Theresa May and bring Boris Johnson as the new leader. But what is the point now? Now, despite the recent development of them just going around spending their time criticising a compromise deal, saying it's not a deal. Obviously, the deal is not perfect. There's a lot of flaws, there's a lot of issues, but it's a compromise deal and it's not the end. And just because you say it's a treaty, every international agreement is a treaty, doesn't mean that's the end. The whole point of it is during the transition you could negotiate a trade deal and the whole withdrawal agreement would be redundant after a couple of years. Now, putting that aside, if Boris Johnson tomorrow, for example, stands in the election on a manifesto, written manifesto saying we are standing on a platform of no deal Brexit, would the Brexit Party still go around and threaten the Tory party saying you either have to make a pact with us or we're going to split the vote and make Jeremy Corbyn Prime Minister? What's the point of that? So we don't know where they stand and it's just getting ridiculous. The Brexiteers, regardless of who you support, we have to unite. And this is the issue I have with the loyalists with just because you support an individual, whether it's Boris Johnson or Nigel Farage or even Jeremy Corbyn. Don't treat these people as gods. Don't just go, well, I trust this person. Regardless of what they say, I'm going to believe, I'm going to do. These people are not God. Sometimes they make mistakes. Boris Johnson's make mistakes. Nigel's makes mistakes. We have to support them and criticise them at the same time. Always be objective. Now, third is the Remain Parliament. Now, they're getting absolutely ridiculous now because since 2016, the vote for Brexit, these people voted to trigger Article 50. Now, part of the document of Article 50 said that at the end of the deadline, if there's no agreement, and if it fails in somehow, whether in Parliament or in the EU, we will leave without a deal. So they've been blocking no deal all along. and because they wanted the deal. Now, Boris Johnson gave them the deal, and they still blocked the deal. So this is the reason that people are now standing up. This is the reason that in the next few days, we're going to be marching in Westminster towards Parliament against these people, against the establishment. People versus Parliament has completely begun. And this is now time for a general election. It's time for the sacking of these people. Now, next is the Labour Party. I don't know what the point of the Labour Party is at this point because, they're polling at 20%. It's not really great. All they care about is their political party and their tribe and their getting into power. They don't even know the reality of politics. For example, watch this.
We want the Tories out as soon as possible. We want to sort out Brexit. We also want to sort out austerity, which has lasted for 9 years.
Polls say you won't win.
Pardon?
The polls say you won't win.
The polls said we wouldn't win last time.
You didn't.
But
no, Richard, you didn't win the election in 2017. Now, these are the people that could be in government. If we split the vote, the Brexit vote, in the next election, these people could be running our government. So don't risk that, ever. But going back to the Brexit Party, for example, and the Tories themselves, if they don't unite somehow, and I'm not talking about a pact, as Brexiteers, not even talking about the parties, we individuals, there's going to be a lot of issues. The Brexit Party themselves are having issues inside the party. We've said, a couple of people resigned. Now we have a candidate who's resigned. In a recent news in the Times, there's another Brexit Party candidate who has resigned because of the new stance that Nigel Farage is taking, and it's not really helpful. Now, because of the extension letter, the European Union are now going to be taking a couple of days to get all the 27 countries together to discuss a potential extension, and there are talks of a 3-month flex extension, essentially, a flexible extension where if we could either have an election and the Tories get a majority and then leave whenever. But France and a couple of other countries are not really completely happy about this. Expectations are that the EU will grant the 31st of January extension. Macron is said to be hostile to a delay, but not willing to carry the can for no deal. It will depend on what form the grant will come. But it is going to be discussed in Brussels this afternoon, so it could be as early as tomorrow or Friday. Now, obviously, there are a lot of rumours, especially on Twitter, going around saying what the Downing Street are saying, but there's no actual official line coming out of government just yet. The only thing we've had is that Boris Johnson made a statement in the House and said that he's preparing for no deal. He's increasing the preparation, planning for no deal. At the same time, he's going to be waiting to see what the EU says.
Is that the government must take the only responsible course and accelerate our preparations for a no-deal outcome. But secondly, I will speak to EU member states about their intentions until they have reached a decision. Until they've reached a decision, I must say, we will pause this legislation. And let me be clear. Our policy remains that we should not delay, that we should leave the EU on October the 31st, and that is what I will say to the EU, and I will report back to the House. And one way or another, we will leave the EU.
Now, that's not too bad, because he hasn't completely accepted defeat just yet. And this is why the Remainers' delaying tactics are actually boosting Boris Johnson, because the growing desperation of the Prime Minister's opponents only serves to increase his standing with voters at large. You could see that in the polls. The Conservatives are now up by 6 points at 37%, Labour 24%, and Brexit Party is still at 11%. And another poll shows that Boris Johnson is now at 43% with the British public, Jeremy Corbyn 20%. And Not Sure is actually second. So Jeremy Corbyn is third in a question of between two choices. And again, another poll shows with YouGov that the Tories again on 37%, the Brexit Party at 11%, Labour 22%. And this is why the government need to be very careful about what they're going to be doing. So they could either accept an extension and call for an election, get a majority and deliver Brexit. That's one option. But because they prepared the whole country and businesses across the country for the 31st of October, the deadline is ridiculous. You can't keep creating new deadlines. people are getting frustrated. It's going to be affecting the economy and businesses. So I understand why Boris was pushing for his timetable to make sure that we leave on the 31st, because to get rid of the uncertainty. It's simple. So if he really cares about that deadline, you have two options. He has to either call around with the 27 countries and say, no guys, I tried, but now I'm going to have to go with no deal. And he needs to get at least one country to veto. It's going to be very difficult, but he has to say that even if you extend it, he has to bluff and say, I'm not going to call an election. Or even if I call an election, I'm going to stand on a platform of no deal. So it's going to be happening anyway. That's one option, quite radical. The second option is a semi-no deal situation where this is what a lot of people have already recommended, to go out and say, fine, let's just have a basic free trade deal, which is like a transition period until we negotiate a proper free trade deal, which means we will be able to leave on the 31st of October. John Redwood, the Conservative MP, has also tweeted this. The only way forward that could deliver a good Brexit is leaving on the 31st of October without signing a treaty and then offering a free trade deal. I've been trying to convince the government to do this. Maybe more will now see, and they're trying to compromise with the Remain Parliament, and with a watered down Brexit won't work. And he's right, because Boris could go out there and say, well, I tried to deliver the deal, the compromise, and it's either a no deal or a free trade deal, a short-term version, until we actually negotiate a proper one within the next year or so. People are getting tired, and this is what we are now facing with the British public.
Why should I respect anybody else's vote in the future when they don't respect mine from the 23rd of June 2016? Democracy's dead. I'm not going to vote because I voted and it didn't count. I'm some sort of second-class citizen who doesn't count. It's so serious. It's more serious than Brexit. Do we have democracy in this country or not? And my understanding is no, we don't.
And he's absolutely right. And this is exactly why we are now preparing to march in Westminster in the next few days. To see what happens on Friday with the European Council and what the decision is going to be. Otherwise, the people are not going to be giving up. Brexit is going to be happening. Don't worry. Because the EU have said, even if they give an extension, they will put in writing that this is the final extension. You cannot stop Brexit. And we're not going to be giving up. So prepare for that. And as I said, when we say something is likely or unlikely, it's not a 100% prediction. I'm not God. But sometimes when we say something is likely, it's happened. Sometimes it hasn't happened. So I'm not in charge of the negotiations. So don't come to me complaining why didn't happen, Maya, or why did this happen, Maya. It's not in my control. I'm just reporting and analysing. So let's wait till Friday and see what happens. Let's not lose hope. We're still leaving the EU. It's just a matter of timing. But we're going to go out there, outside Parliament, demanding a general election and demanding a vote and demanding Brexit. And if you want to stay up to date with the Brexit news, make sure you follow my Twitter and Instagram. And as always, don't forget to subscribe and click on the bell next to it so you get notified when I release a new video. The videos come out every day at 5:45 p.m. And Maya Tousi, and I'll see you tomorrow with a new video.